General Jip's claws clicked against the polished floor of military command as he made his way down the corridor, his tail swaying in gentle counterbalance to his stride. The scars on his scaled hide caught the light from the overhead illumination strips, telling stories of battles long past. At 4 meters tall, he had to duck slightly under the doorways, a minor inconvenience in a galaxy that increasingly accommodated the galaxy's larger species. Mainly to accommodate humans, he thought, with a mix of amusement and respect. The door to strategic planning hissed open, revealing a room dominated by holographic displays of star systems and military reports. General Crix stood, or rather hovered, at chest height to Jip, their ceremonial hoverlift platform humming softly. Even with the technological assist, the Minican general barely reached Jip's knee. Their slim frame and delicate features were typical of their species, though the ceremonial armor they wore was anything but delicate, covered in miniaturized weapons systems and defensive arrays. General Jip, Crix's voice was surprisingly deep for their size, carried clearly by their audio enhancers. Thank you for coming. I understand you've been retired for some time. Jip lowered himself carefully into the reinforced chair provided. Retired, yes, but not quite out of touch, his amber eyes fixed on the holographic display. I see you're reviewing the Nexus War archives. Yes. Crix manipulated the controls with practiced ease, their long fingers dancing through the light. Specifically, the Supersoldier programs. We're considering new contracts with 3 species for... A low rumble of laughter interrupted them, the sound resonating from deep in Jip's throat. Let me guess, the Kraxon, the Veet, perhaps the Mathuri? Crix's antenna twitched in surprise. How did you... Because everyone tries them first. Jip's tail curled around the base of his chair. They look perfect on paper, don't they? The Kraxon with their natural armor, the Veet with their speed, the Mathuri with their regeneration, all from nice, stable worlds with predictable climates and gentle gravity. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to a near whisper, all completely useless as super soldiers. Crix's head tilted, a gesture of confusion common to their species. With respect, General, the preliminary testing data means nothing. Jip reached out and touched a control, bringing up footage from 30 years ago. The hologram showed a battlefield on some distant world where massive armored figures moved with impossible grace through chaos and destruction. Do you know what you're looking at, Crix? Human super soldiers, the Zeus program, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. Jip's claws traced the path of one soldier as they leapt clean over a barricade, twisted in midair to avoid fire, and landed in a roll that brought them up firing. What you're seeing is impossible by most species standards. The gravity alone on their homeworld should have made them slow, clumsy. The environmental variations should have made them specialized, limited. Instead, the footage showed the soldier transitioning seamlessly from scorching desert to frozen wasteland, never breaking stride. Instead, it made them perfect, Crix finished, their voice barely audible. No, Jip corrected, it made them human, and that's so much better than perfect. He settled back in his chair, memories of his own first encounter with human super soldiers playing behind his eyes. You wanted to meet because you're considering non-human super soldier programs. I'm here to tell you why that would be a waste of resources, lives, and time. Crix's antennae quivered with curiosity. You sound very certain. I am. Jip's scaled hand reached out to freeze the footage on an image of a human super soldier standing amid the aftermath of battle, their armor scarred but their stance unwavering. Because 30 years ago, I made the same mistake you're about to make, and I learned a lesson that every military commander in the galaxy eventually learns. He turned to face Crix fully, his amber eyes reflecting the holographic light. The very things that should make humans terrible candidates for enhancement are exactly what make them the only species suited for it. And if you'll indulge an old reptile, I'll explain why. Let's start with basics, Jip said, his clawed hand manipulating the holographic controls. The battlefield footage disappeared, replaced by a galactic map. What do you notice about the homeworlds of our most advanced species? Crick studied the display, their hoverlift platform bringing them closer to the illuminated points. They're all within the galactic habitable zone, stable orbits, predictable seasons. And, Jip's tail twitched expectantly, and they're all relatively small, lower gravity than Earth. Crick's antennae drooped slightly, which you already knew I would notice. Jip's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. The Kraxan homeworld, 0.4 Earth gravity, Vit 0.5, Mithuri 0.6. My species? 0.7. Your people evolved on a moon with 0.3. He gestured at Crick's hoverlift. Hence your excellent grasp of anti-gravity technology. The display shifted, showing Earth spinning slowly. And then there's this monster, a gravity well that should have produced squat, muscle-bound brutes barely capable of vertical locomotion. Instead, admirable tricks, field of truth therapy for persons who have artistic potential. The laboratory response in the wrinkled human face has hit a moment of clarity, naturalizing into their faces. Human child is born into a forge. Every human child is born into resistance training. Their bones grow denser, their muscles more efficient. By the time they reach adulthood, they're already stronger than most species-enhanced warriors. But raw strength isn't everything, Crick's countered, bringing up their own data displays. The Kraxan have natural armor that can shatter in extreme temperature shifts, Jip interrupted. Show me the Kraxan testing footage. Crick's fingers danced through the controls. A new recording appeared, showing a massive armored being in a testing chamber. The enhanced Kraxan moved with incredible power, its reinforced natural plating deflecting weapons fire. Then the chamber temperature began to shift. Watch, Jip said softly. The temperature dropped rapidly. The Kraxan's movements became jerky, uncertain. As the cold intensified, cracking sounds emerged from their armor plates. When the heat suddenly kicked in, the thermal shock caused their entire exoskeleton to splinter. The same story plays out with all of them, Jip continued, his voice heavy with memory. The Vit, their enhanced speed becomes a liability when humidity drops below their homeworld's norm. Their synapses literally start misfiring. The Mithuri regeneration fails completely in cold environments. Survival before pain has become an inconceivable threat. Unless the shit shows a willingness to surrender or the right to get what they want. But these are engineering problems, Crick's protested. We can design environmental systems to do what? Jip's tail lashed once, betraying his frustration. To recreate their perfect, stable homeworld conditions? The universe isn't stable, Crick's. Combat isn't stable. Look at this. The display shifted again, showing a human super soldier fighting through a sandstorm, then diving underwater, then emerging into sub-zero conditions. No environmental systems, no homeworld simulation, just adaptation. Do you know why? Jip leaned forward. Because their homeworld never gave them the luxury of stability. Earth's temperature swings from -50 DEGC to +50 DEGC. Humans evolved handling pressure variations that would kill most species. Desert to tundra, mountain to sea. Their planet forced them to adapt to everything. Crick's antennae wiggled thoughtfully. This is why they've colonized so successfully. Billions of worlds, Jip confirmed. While the rest of us search for planets that match our homeworlds, humans just adapt. Their baseline environmental tolerance exceeds most species' enhanced capabilities. He brought up comparison charts. When we enhance other species, we're trying to force them beyond their evolutionary parameters. But humans, they're already designed for extremes. Enhancement just lets them do what they're naturally built for. Better. You mentioned the Nexus War, Crick said quietly. You fought against human super soldiers? Jip's hand unconsciously moved to a particularly deep scar on his hide. Fought against. Then alongside, let me show you what happened when our perfect enhanced warriors met them in actual combat. It's educational. The holographic display shifted again, and Jip's amber eyes reflected the chaos that began to unfold within it. The holographic display erupted with chaos, the Battle of Proxima Gate in all its fury. Jip manipulated the controls with practiced ease, his scarred hands moving through the light with practiced precision. This was our perfect strike team, he narrated, as enhanced Kraxan warriors moved through the battlefield. Their movements were powerful, coordinated, and utterly predictable. 16 of the finest specimens, enhanced with the most advanced biotech we could develop. Watch what happens when the environment shifts. The footage showed the Kraxan team encountering a sudden atmospheric breach. Emergency force fields contained the breach, but the rapid pressure and temperature changes sent the enhanced warriors into confusion. Their movements became erratic, their coordinated attack pattern dissolving. Now watch the humans. 3 figures in advanced armor dropped from a higher level. Where the Kraxan moved like unstoppable forces in a straight line, the humans moved like water, flowing around obstacles, adapting to each new challenge instantly. When the atmospheric breach occurred, they didn't even break stride. This one, Jip froze the footage on a particular soldier, switched combat styles 4 times in 6 seconds. Close quarters, ranged, 0G grappling, and back to ranged. No other species can transition that quickly. Their brains aren't wired for it. Crick's antennae twitched with interest. Because of Earth's environmental demands? He asked. Partly. Jip expanded the display to show multiple battles simultaneously. But it's more than that. Look at their colonial success rates. Data streamed across the display. Human colonial ventures showing a 95% success rate across billions of worlds. The next highest species barely reached 20%. Every time we thought we found their limit, they adapted. Toxic atmosphere? They build better filtration. High gravity? They adjust their muscle density. Extreme radiation? Their cells actually learn to cope. Jip's tail swished in agitation. Do you know they've even colonized gas giants? They built floating cities, and their children are born there, growing up stronger in the higher gravity. 3 generations in, and they're practically a new subspecies. But surely there are limits, Crix began. Of course there are limits, Jip interrupted, his scales flushing slightly with emotion. But they see limits as challenges. Watch this footage from the Helios campaign. Jip, the display showed a human super soldier team approaching what appeared to be an impossible situation, a heavily fortified position on a volcanic world with environmental conditions that should have made survival, let alone combat, impossible. Standard doctrine said this was a no-win scenario. Atmospheric processors were down, surface temperature was over 200 DEBC, the enhanced VEET team we sent in first lasted exactly 43 seconds. The humans lasted 4 hours. They completed their mission. They even took prisoners. Ow. Crix's question was barely a whisper. Plans to deal with a situation on the developing planet. It was the trivial stuff that made them successful. The people used the volcanic vents for cover, turned the extreme conditions into Death Valley back on Earth. Jip shook his massive head. When we debriefed them later, they said they'd practiced similar scenarios in Death Valley, back on Earth. For fun. The display shifted again, showing a montage of human colonial achievements. Cities under gas giant storms, settlements in the crushing depths of ocean worlds, mining operations in the hearts of asteroids. This is why they're expanding faster than any species in history, Jip continued. They're not just surviving these environments, they're thriving in them, making them home. My own species took 3 centuries to adapt to a 2-degree temperature variation on our colonies. Humans, they complain about the weather and then adapt in a single generation. And as super soldiers? Crix asked. Jip's amber eyes fixed on the smaller general. They become something else entirely. The enhancement process just amplifies what's already there. Their adaptability, their creativity, their sheer stubborn refusal to accept impossibility as a concept. He brought up one final piece of footage, a single human super soldier standing against what appeared to be overwhelming odds. Would you like to know what happened next? Jip asked quietly. Crix's antennae quivered with anticipation. Show me. The holographic display exploded into action. The lone human super soldier, surrounded and outgunned, moved with impossible speed and precision. But it wasn't just the physical performance that made Crix's antennae quiver. It was the improvisation. Watch closely, Jip rumbled. This is where it all falls apart for anyone who thinks they can replicate human super soldiers. Exultation. The soldier used debris as weapons, turned enemy fire against their own lines, and seemed to anticipate movements before they happened. Environmental hazards became tactical advantages. What should have been a last stand became a decisive victory. Impossible, Crix whispered. No. Jip's tail curled thoughtfully. Human. And that's why I'm here, speaking to you now. He shut down the footage and brought up another file, classified reports from failed enhancement programs. Because what you're planning? We tried it. All of us. Every major military power in the galaxy has attempted to create their own super soldiers, and they all failed spectacularly. The documents scrolled past. Psychological breakdowns, physical failures, entire programs shuttered after devastating losses. There was a common theme of things going wrong, of idleness. The Craxan enhancement subjects went insane when their perfect armor proved less than perfect. The Vitae candidates shattered their own minds trying to process combat data at enhanced speeds. The Mithuri, Jip paused, his scales darkening with remembered grief. The Mithuri succumbed to psychological breakdown when their regeneration couldn't keep up with battlefield damage. But why? Crix's hoverlift platform drifted closer to the displays. The enhancement process is sound. The process isn't the problem, Jip interrupted. It's the foundation. You can't take a species evolved for stability and expect them to handle chaos. You can't take beings adapted to perfect conditions and expect them to thrive in imperfection. He gestured at the galaxy map. Look at where we all came from. Nice, stable worlds, predictable environments, limited challenges. The map shifted to Earth, rotating slowly in the holographic light. And then there's Earth. Earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, and heat waves. Predators and prey evolving in an endless arms race. Their very planet tried to kill them every step of the way. Jip's voice tried to trail off. They didn't just survive it, they were forged by it. Every human is the end product of billions of years of adaptation to chaos itself. Crix studied the data scrolling past. Our scientists believed. Your scientists, Jip said gently, are looking at it backward. They see human adaptability as a fault, a sign of imperfect evolution. They think specialized traits like the Craxan's armor or the Veith's speed are superior. But specialization is weakness. Adaptation is strength. He brought up the colonial statistics again. Humans have settled more worlds in the last century than the rest of us have in a millennium. They've colonized worlds we declared uninhabitable. Their children are born on gas giants, ice worlds, desert planets, and they thrive. When we enhance humans, we're not forcing them to exceed their limits. We're giving them better tools to do what they already do naturally. Jip stood, his full height making Crix's hoverlift platform drift back slightly. You wanted to know if other species could make effective super soldiers. The answer is no, not because we're inferior, but because we're too specialized, too perfect for our own narrow environments. He reached out with one scarred hand and shut down the holographic display, leaving them in the dimmed light of the command center. Nature spent billions of years creating the perfect super soldier on Earth, he said quietly. It used gravity as a forge, chaos as a teacher, and adversity as a cutting tool. The result? He gestured to the now dark displays. You saw it yourself. Every human is born with the potential to adapt to almost anything. When we enhance them, we're not trying to overcome their limitations. We're unleashing their natural potential. Crix was silent for a long moment, their antennae moving in complex patterns that suggested deep thought. Finally, they spoke. You said you fought against them, then alongside them. What did you do? Crix asked. Yes. Yip's hand moved unconsciously to his oldest scar. Best decision I ever made, because here's the real truth about human super soldiers, Crix. They're not just better at fighting. They're better at stopping fights, at finding solutions, at adapting to peace just as readily as war. He smiled, showing rows of super soldier who can only destroy. Yet, the smaller general studied their datapad for a long moment before making a decisive gesture. The files on non-human enhancement programs vanished. The best that any prospective specimen can hope for is the chance of recovery. I think, Crix said carefully, that I need to revise my proposal, perhaps a joint training program with human forces instead. Jip's amber eyes gleamed with approval. Now that, young one, is a much better idea. Shall I put you in touch with their command? Please. Crix's antennae straightened with determination. After all, who better to learn from than the species that turned their home world's worst traits into their greatest strengths? As they left the command center together, Jip glanced one last time at the darkened displays. Somewhere out there, human super soldiers were probably doing the impossible on a dozen different worlds. And somewhere else, human children were being born on gas giants and ice worlds, already beginning their own journey of adaptation. He wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. Feel free to comment and share this story too. It helps the channel grow. Let's make this channel huge together.